So if we consider more closely Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, under Article 6 you find a set of provisions for how countries can collaborate with each other and for how countries can sort of like exchange, for example, the result of their domestic mitigation actions, and that allows, for example, mitigation actions to take place where it's cheapest, so like in countries that have the potential to reduce carbon emission cost effectively, and then it also allows for those emissions to be transferred to countries that might face more costly or more difficult domestic abatement. And so while Article 6 only provides a brief outline for those provisions, what's happening now under the UNFCCC process is that negotiators are trying to develop a way to operationalize the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. So that means writing an actual rule book and actual implementing details over how those rules will be designed. This process is expected to be completed by the end of next year, so by COP24. And of course, the discussion is still open. There are a wide range of possibilities for how to design those rules. Parties have different views on how those rules should be designed. But of course, like, we think that they should be designed in such a way that allow for maximum action both from states and from the private sector as well. Well, so we also believe that, like Article 6 is really the place in the Paris Agreement that could potentially open the door for the private sector to provide the finance needed to finance the achievement of the long-term goal of the Paris Agreement. And that's also why we think that Article 6 should be implemented and the rulebook should be designed in such a way that allows for maximum participation of the private sector. Because if you design, for example, an instrument that is effective at mobilizing private finance, then that would also ease the whole discussion around climate finance and would result in the mobilization of the effect of the needed scale of climate finance. Well, primarily for mitigation activities, but that could in turn also result in a later mobilization of finance for adaptation activities as well. But the primary focus of Article 6 is of course on mitigation. Well, so in the context of Article 6, you have provisions for the creation of a new emission mitigation mechanism that could be a mechanism that can quantify, for example, an emission reduction activity. And if you allow for example, the private sector participation in such mechanism, this could be a way, for example, for the private sector to finance emission mitigation activities, and then to sort of also benefit from the acquisition of emission mitigation credits that can then be sold to, for example, other parties and help other parties to meet their NDC and their mitigation commitment. So this would sort of go a little bit in the direction of what the CDM and the JI did under the Kyoto Protocol. But given that the Article 6.4 mechanism will function under the Paris Agreement, it will also need to be designed in a radically different way from the Kyoto Protocol flexibility mechanism. It could be way broader. It could provide for, well, more possible applications. So instead of simply being a project-based crediting mechanism, it could operate at the bigger scale. And it could really be a mechanism to help countries meet their emission mitigation commitment, and to also facilitate the participation of the private sector in these activities. And then again, it should be designed in such a way that is compatible with the new reality and the new dimension and the new architecture of the Paris Agreement. I mean, like, over the last few years, like, you're already seeing like carbon markets being developed and implemented around the world. Like, we are starting to see many like more and more examples of that. Like, for example, in the EU, there has been an active emission trading system for more than a decade now, but new jurisdictions are also in the process of developing new systems, simply because it's becoming more and more the preferred way to reduce carbon emissions domestically, and a way to facilitate that, and a way to sort of like also provide an easier way for countries to implement an emission trading system is effectively by allowing them to link their systems under the framework of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, and that allows countries to collaborate on mitigation activities, and also allows to keep the cost down. So, for example, like a report that was recently published by the World Bank estimated that by linking carbon markets with each other, you can cut the compliance cost, and you can cut the society cost to reduce emissions by 30% by 2030 and by 50% by 2050, simply by linking the existing markets. And so that provides a way for countries also to move beyond their initial commitments and to raise their ambition, and it's also an incentive for other countries to go down the same path.